In this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to work with live paint in some imported drawings from AutoCAD. The first thing I'm going to start out is I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this line work. And this is going to hold all the line work that we see on our page. I'm going to select all of our line work layers here and just drag these up into that new layer. So this new layer is going to hold all our original line work. Then what I'm going to do, clicking the circle here next to the name of the layer, this will select all of the objects. In the Layers panel, I'm going to click this drop down menu here, then click on Duplicate Line Work. So this is going to make a copy of that layer. We're going to use the copy as the basis for our live paint group. So I'm going to take that copy, I'm going to drag it underneath the original line work, and I'm actually going to lock the original line work and turn it off. And then with the line work copy layer, I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to call that live paint. Now I'm going to select all of my objects, go to Object, Live Paint, Make, and this will make a live paint group out of all of those lines. And you can see if we expand the hatch and copy layer that this is where our live paint group is sitting. And I can even drag this live paint group up to this layer here and delete the other ones if I just want to be a little cleaner about organizing layers. So we've got our live paint group made, but we also have our original line work on top. And I actually want to control the look of the line work through this original layer here, but I don't want to see any of the line work in the live paint. Now the reason for turning off all of the line weights in the live paint layer is because the live paint actually grouped all the objects together, so there's really no way to go back and edit them easily. So that's why we're keeping the line work layer and overlaying that on top. So in order to set the line weight of the live paint group to 0, what we can do is double click on an object and make sure that your line work layer is turned off and that only your live paint is on. So I'm going to double click on an object and this will take me inside the live paint group. I'm going to select all my objects, and you'd think that you could just go into stroke and set the stroke to 0, but I found that this usually never works. So instead I'm going to select all my objects and actually just make the stroke and set that to none. So I'm going to click this back arrow up here and this will exit me out of the live paint group. Then you'll notice that live paint is completely invisible, so we'll turn the line work layer back on, but our live paint is still there. So now we're going to grab the live paint bucket tool, which you can find over on the left. The keyboard shortcut is K. Now to set the color for this, we'll go back to our colors, and we want to make sure that the fill, that's the color that we want to adjust. So I could double click on the fill, I could go pick a color here. Say we'll pick just kind of a medium gray, and we'll use this for our grade. Then I can go in and paint anything that's contained within the lines. So it's not going to let me paint out here, but anything that's inside of here, it'll let me paint. Actually, I think that gray is a little too dark, so I'm just going to brighten that up a little bit. But I want to choose a dark gray for where it's actually cutting through. In most cases I choose not to leave the hatch in here. I'd actually turn that layer off in the AutoCAD, but in this one I just kept it in as an example. I'm just going to select a darker gray and then go paint in the hatch. If you click and drag, you can select multiple areas instead of just clicking once. Let's say I wanted to be able to paint this whole area without actually dragging to select all these individual lines because of the hatch. What I could do is I could turn the line work off in our live paint here. If you click on this little circle here, that'll actually select the group because at the moment it's invisible. And I'm going to double click on that so we're inside the live paint group. I'm going to select all my objects, and actually I'm just going to select the stroke and bring it back to black so that I can see the objects. What I can do is just select all these diagonal lines and delete them. And this is actually just deleting the lines inside the live paint group and not your original line work. If you want to pan around in Illustrator, it works the same way as in InDesign. If you hold the space bar, you can use that to pan around. Then before I exit back out, I'm just going to select all of the lines, set the stroke back to none so that it's invisible, and then I'm going to exit the live paint group and turn my original line work back on. So you can see when I get the live paint bucket tool out that this area is now acting as one area instead of dividing it out according to all of these hatch lines. If you want to sample a previous area that you've drawn, in the live paint bucket tool, if you hold Alt down, this will bring up the eyedropper, and you can use this to sample an area. You can see that that just picked out that dark gray fill. And we can even switch to the light gray if we wanted to. And I'm just going to put a little bit of color in here on our kind of recessed area of the cube. And kind of the whole purpose that we put our original line work on top is that we can go back and edit it later. In this case, I think the grade line is a little too heavy, so I can go back to the grade layer, click this circle here, which will select all of the lines in those layers. Maybe I'll bring the stroke down to maybe say 3.5. Yeah, that's looking a little bit better.